Hello and welcome back. 22nd of December today. Getting very close to the end of our little Advent journey now. You'll notice that I haven't been giving little factoids of what has happened on this day in previous years like I did on last year's calendar, and that's because it was bloody hard. Actually finding something like a momentous event that happened on each day of December throughout the whole month, I really struggled, so I'm not doing that again. But let's hope we can get some good whiskey on the fourth last dram. Another peppery one, I think. Peppery, spicy, woody. And probably a similar colour to the Benromach that we had yesterday. Hopefully it's not a double. Actually probably darker than the Benromach yesterday, which is already quite dark. Lots and lots of oakiness on that one. It smells good though, much more intense on the nose than the Benromach that we had yesterday. Cool, that might be quite strong. And that's saying something, because I always think that it's quite hard to tell the ABV of a whiskey just based on how it smells. I think that you can quite often go badly wrong doing that, and it's much easier to get a feel of the ABV from the intensity on the palate. So it seems like a nice full-bodied whiskey that we've got today. Peppery, fruity. Possibly some virgin oak gone into this one. A little bit of damp oakiness, but kind of a sweet and spicy woodiness throughout. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that's been put into quarter casks, perhaps. Small, very, very active virgin oak. Quite fruity though, but I feel like a lot of that fruitiness is probably coming from that very active oak. I think the oak on this one is possibly an American oak, like, again, quarter casks tend to be made from American oak. Not always, but quite often. A little bit of a floral, sweet floral note. But very spicy, very woody, and very good. Very intense nose, a little bit of chocolatiness perhaps coming through from that wood oak spice. So a little bit simple, but I would guess from the nose probably a youngish but high quality, reasonably high ABV. I mean like 46, 48, maybe 50%, something like that. Let's see how it tastes. Very, very oaky. Lots of sweet toasted oak. Like the sweet flavours, kind of like honey and caramel that you get from really well toasted, good quality fresh casks that have been kind of opened up by that charring process. I think that faint element of youth that I smelt on the nose isn't really present on the palate. I think if this wasn't the Scotch Whisky Single Malt Collection calendar, I'd be tempted to guess that this one might be a wild whisky, because it's got that heavily oak spiced, slightly jelly sweet note that you quite often get from a young, well-made whisky put into very active oak, which a lot of wild whiskies really like to do. I'm looking at you, Macmura. But I would say this would be on par with some of the better Macmuras. Yeah, a little bit of a jelly, almost wine gum note, and lots of oak. A little bit of raw oak, a little bit of doughy, starchy oak. probably the only criticism I have of this whiskey is that you don't get to see the spirit quite enough, and I think that some of that fruitiness is coming through from the spirit, but it's very, very, very oak heavy. Excellent intensity there, really strong, bold aromas on the nose. And lovely, dense, full-bodied flavours on the palate. I think this is probably a whiskey that I perhaps wouldn't have appreciated like 10, 15 years ago when I was not that happy with overly oaked whiskies. I remember when I first tried things like Lefroy Quarter Cask, and the intense oak on that was just far too much for me. It was too much, in my opinion, like chewing on a pencil, just all oak. But I think that myself and possibly a lot of other people are kind of warming up to these extremely active oaky whiskies, and I don't mind this style. It does smell a bit young on the nose, but not too young. Not really a flaw, it's just an observation that you can smell, or I think you can smell, that this is not an overly old whiskey. So that's another dilemma. Where the hell is this going to go in the leaderboard? I think it's better, it's going to be top third, better than the Bocan. What about the Murray McDavid Tullibardine? Oh, that's a beautiful whiskey. Oh, that nutty dried fruit sherry note. I don't think it's as good as that one. I think it's going to be fighting it out with the Distel 3. Bunnahabhain. Don't know, that's difficult. Again, that really comes down to preference. I think that whatever we've got today is a very similar level of quality to the Bunnahabhain 12. But the Bunnahabhain 12, you've got that real sweet sherry profile to it. This one is all about the oak. So, you guys might disagree with me, but I think that it's really a bit of a wild goose chase, for want of a better word, to try and compare these whiskies, because they're two different profiles at the same quality level. Deanston. I think I probably like it a little bit more than the Deanston. I'm going to have a little bit more, tiny bit more of today's whiskey. Perhaps European oak, because it has got a little bit of a dry cocoa peppery spiciness to it. Is that because the oak is very active, or is it a little bit of European oak? Hard to say. In some ways, it's not a million miles away from some Bunnahabhain whiskies. It reminds me a little bit of Bunnahabhain Styradar, so like the no-age statement version of the Bunnahabhain 12, and for that reason, although it's very, very good, I think I'm gonna have to break up the Distel 3 that we've had for quite a while now, and it's going to go in below the Bunnahabhain. So what have we got? Be great if it was Styradar, but I doubt it. I don't think they'd have two things so similar. It's a Glenturret. Glenturret 12-year-old 2022. So what is the ABV on that? It is 46%. So it is a standard core range release. And I don't think I've actually had this one. I had a bunch of Glenturrets many, many years ago. But since they've had the rebrand, I think I've only really had the triple wood. No, I've had the triple wood and the peated one. So probably the other two out of the three main core range whiskies, not had this one before. And in hindsight, this fits in with the profile really well that I got from the triple wood and the peated Glenturret. And they seem to be making very good whiskey these days. This is the 2022, so it's not the current release. Have heard some mixed reports on Glenturret, some rumblings that the quality has gone a little bit downhill. I haven't kept up with their releases enough to be able to form a judgment on that, but I think that this one is really good stuff. So Glenturret 12, that's going to go in between the Bunnahabhain and the Deanston. How much is Glenturret 12 for a bottle? What are we looking at for this? It's probably, knowing Glenturret, it's going to be a little more than you want to pay for a 12-year-old 46% whiskey, but probably not too much. So I'm just going to go with the first thing that comes up, which is Master of Malt, not a sponsor. And they've got the 2021 release, and it's £65. So yeah, as I said, probably a little bit more than you want to pay for a 12-year-old 46% whiskey, and possibly more than I'd want to pay for something that's that oak heavy and oak dominated. I'd like to see a little bit more balance for £65. And it probably makes it one of, if not the most expensive whiskey that we've had so far in this calendar. So it just goes to show that money isn't always everything, and it's not always linked to quality. Because although this is a very good whiskey, it's not 50% better than a lot of the things that we've had in the calendar before that sell for about £35-40. It's just not, in my opinion. But it is a very solid whiskey. Let me know what you think of the Glenturret range if you've had it, because I know that a lot of people are saying really good things about it. A lot of people are getting excited about their rebrand and kind of the rebirth of that distillery. Because for a long time, Glenturret, they didn't really do a lot. I think the Glenturret distillery is home to the famous grouse experience. So if it's still there, if you rock up to the Glenturret distillery, you get to see and hear a load of marketing BS about how wonderful famous grouse is. Which is not really advertising the Glenturret distillery to its full glory. But it is good that we're getting proper 46% quality whiskies from a distillery which was previously a blend component, basically. All positive things happening at Glenturret. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.